do this. So when we start out doing these, you usually go through those first 6 questions, right? Who, what, when, where, how, and why. That's normally what we start out with. And it does take a text down to the parts, really and truly. It makes it kind of dry. It is all the parts, but that's where some of the stuff starts sort of illuminating and lighting up for us. And so I know last week when we finished up, I said, hey, let's make sure we go home and we finish doing who, what, when, where, how, and why. And potentially look at doing an overview of the book, or at least a loose idea. So I think what I would like to do, and y'all give me feedback, is just I went ahead and put some PowerPoint together just to say, here's where I landed. And then have y'all give me your input. Like, this is what else I saw, or I wrote this down, or whatever. Does that sound good? I mean, obviously still like very loose format. I'm not wanting to go the whole way here and just be like, here's what I did. But I think it tends to help. And I will say this is also exactly my process every single time. And I'll just do the notes. They don't necessarily have any flow whatsoever. And as I start to put a lesson together, if I get into a part where I'm like, oh, this is that person, then I go to that section of notes and I will start pulling so that I can put it together so it makes sense to teach it. And so when you're discipling someone, you want it to make sense from start to finish with the person. If there's a particular doctrine that you're teaching them or a story that you're working through, it doesn't want to be, well, here's this interesting fact and here's this other fact and some more trivia and randomness. And also let's talk about the geographical location. Like, it needs to flow just like a good story should. But you can't do that if you don't have all the parts, right? I kind of laugh with the kids about that, where I'm like, you can't put a Lego pack together until you divide the Legos out. Like, it can't turn into a castle or a ship or whatever until you take all the little parts and then you can put the picture together, kind of thing. So when I did who, a lot of this is from last week when we talked about it. But obviously I had Abraham, and what I'll often do is this right here. Not just who it was with their name, but what role did they play? What interactions did they maybe have with the other person or persons within the conversations? So I put Abraham up. Obviously, Isaac. Isaac was the son of Abraham as the father and the son of promise. So the big play here is that covenant with Abraham.
Can I ask a dumb question?
No dumb questions. You're going to ask all the questions you want to. That would have been helpful. Genesis 22. And look what I remembered to bring. This week I showed up without my Bible. This week I did not. It's like, yes, remember it, Heather. Yeah, so we're doing Genesis 22, 1, not 22. Yes, 22, 1 through 19. I did a lot of backstory today on some of what I was looking through as well, just to go back on a timeline a little bit. And so I was like, wait, was it 22? Yes. Also, my left eye is not focusing. I know that's like random, but I think I just got to do like pirate eye today. The world. It's because it's so dry outside. My eyeballs even dried out. Oh man. And then obviously we all talked about God. And so some of the things that we pulled from it, when Lori read for us, it specifies that he was Jehovah Jireh, which is sometimes presented as Yireh, Y-I-R-E-H, instead of just J, but that's what I grew up with it as. In the NIV, where is this? Yeah. In the NIV on verse 14, it actually just translates it. So sometimes if you have a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not word to word, but like thought to thought translation, it'll give you those translations. Instead of saying Jehovah Jireh, it will literally say the Lord who provides. That's what mine does. What about y'all? Does anybody else do that where it says the Lord will provide on 14? Yours does?
Yes, I have.
You have NLT, and the ESV does it too? Interesting.
I got James and it has Jehovah Jireh.
It has Jireh. Does it have it with a J or a Y? With a J. Isn't that interesting? Okay, I never did, and I know I have it in my stack, this very large stack of papers. But what Janet brought, I don't know what translation that was. Did y'all happen to notice it? You remember she brought the one in that had the note pieces, and I should have it somewhere in the stack.
Yeah, I thought it was
Was hers NIV? Isn't that interesting? And that's oh, there it is. Hold on. But I don't know that it said it on the paper, did it?
No, I thought that's what she said.
That's what she said. Well, and it's entirely possible that it is, because I think you're right. But the difference is 84 versus, like mine's in 1984 versus a more updated, potentially. That could be why too.
Now, the one that she did, are you talking about the?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
It has Yahweh Yireh in it. Yeah, so it has God, the provider.
Yahweh Jireh.
So it's kind of interesting, right? I mean, it shows up in different ways. depending on the text. And that's one of those things to, if you ever see God called a name in the Bible that you have no idea what it means, you should look it up. Always look it up, so that you can know what that name
What
is.
aspect it's in.
Yes, because it changes the color of the text and the way that Abraham was looking at it, and then the way that we should look at it, right?
Mhm.
If it's written for the original audience that he was the provider, this text in some capacity needs to speak to us for him being our provider, obviously. And it, if it talks about him being peace or whatever, then again, original audience was receiving him in that capacity. In the same way that if you address a woman and she's your mother, then you address her as your mother, and that colors the relationship. Versus if her mom were to talk to her as a daughter, it's a different thing. So it definitely sets a tone. When we talk about tone later on, it definitely sets the tone. So always make note of it, which is obviously why I put it in there. And a lot of this, I will say too, a lot of times when you do some of this tedious work, it's a story that and so you're kind of like, well, but I knew that already. But when you go to prepare a lesson or to pass on the information to someone else, those are the kinds of things that sometimes kind of fly out the window and you don't think about them, but they could be an issue later for that person who's like, I never have seen Jehovah Jireh. What does that mean? Well, it helps them to see a characteristic of God by making sure you make the point instead of just glancing over it just because you already know, right? When we disciple others, it's safer to assume that they're a blank slate versus going into a situation going, well, you know all these things, right? They don't always. So there's a really good book, and I've been trying to get my hands on a copy. I don't think it's published anymore, but it's called The Names of God, and it goes over all of these aspects, and it's really beautiful. But I've been trying to find a used copy of it that didn't cost me $65. As much as I love books, sometimes I'm like, oh, $65. But if y'all ever see it, and I'll have to see if I can find the author's name, unless they've started to republish it. It's supposed to be a really good book for going into that in depth, all the different names that are used for him. So anyway, I keep my eye on thrift books all the time. And then the angel was one of the other secondary characters that was brought up. And so anytime I have a question about a character, this is the kind of thing I'll do too. Is this just an angel? Is it a messenger? Is this a theophany? Is this a Christophany? So are those terms that we know, theophany, Christophany? It's okay if we don't, it's fine. I'm getting some blank stares.
Yeah.
All right. So a Christophany would have been an Old Testament appearance of Jesus Christ in some form. And there are suspected instances where that was who showed up. Now, do we have it confirmed? Absolutely. Not really. The fourth man in the fire, who was he? You take your pick. It could have been whomever, but the question is asked, was it Jesus himself? And there's a lot of reason to believe it was. If it's a theophany, it's God showing up. So sometimes when we see
I knew this, but I didn't know the names.
yeah, no, now you do. So there's technical names for them, funny enough. And there is some speculation here that this was a theophany versus a Christophany, which my personal belief, so not gospel here, Heather's opinion, is it would have been a theophany because it would not have made sense for Christ to have shown up and provided the ram. That's my opinion, because we're looking ahead to substitutionary sacrifice.
Yeah.
So again, that's my opinion.
I agree with you.
There you go. At least there's two of us, right? I always say things and I try to make sure.
It's a stronger indication.
Yes. Yeah.
No.
Not till later, for sure. But I always like to be careful to say, that's my thought, right? That's not in the Bible. And I couldn't give you a verse in any capacity to back that up, except that we're setting an example when we talk about shadows and foreshadowing and so on and so forth. I think that would have been God showing up there, not Christ, because technically Christ's role would have been the ram, the substitute, the sacrifice, right?
Well, and it calls him the God who provides.
Exactly. Yes. Agreed. I think that, see, look there, we have biblical support now. Thank you, Bishop. But it does. I mean, and to me, that is actually really cool if you think about it, because Abraham's already had some angel visitors too, right? So there's sort of a recurrence in his life of these things that are happening, which we'll kind of hit on in a little bit too when we talk about repetition. But it's not unusual for God to show up with him, interestingly enough. So yeah. So I always ask these questions because if I have the time, I'll dive into it a little deeper. Does this really change the meaning of the theological principle? Not really. It doesn't matter if it was just an angel, truthfully, but it does add depth if it was God. And that's pretty cool. So, but I do make notes of it depending on how much time I have for prep work. So, and sometimes people will ask those questions when you're teaching or discipling someone and you're going, I wish I'd looked into that more. So I make a note. But I do think that happens too when you're like on the spotlight and in the hot seat, right? Like the other thing that was brought up last week was the lamb and the ram. Oh, I don't know if I have the donkey. Oh, there's the donkey. The lamb, the ram, and the donkey were three other players that we did put in there, obviously. And then I didn't mean to, but I interjected the servants in the midst of the animals. But there they are. That was not intentional. Sometimes Heather's brain flows like this. So those were all of the who's, and that was what we did kind of talk about in class last week, but this was more of the meat that I would put on it. Rather than just having the list, this is sort of the meat that I would put with it, just an FYI. And these are the kinds of questions that I typically ask to, that ties back into that emotional and tone that we talked about way later on in our classwork, but it does matter. Father and son, God being the father as well. You know, he renamed Abraham to remove him from a pagan naming into a biblical naming. You're my son of covenant, technically. And so that just sort of sets some of that. And then definitely the Jehovah Jireh provider tone across the entire thing. So when I do who, that's what who looks like, truly. Thoughts or questions or other things y'all found this week? Also, my kids took all the water bottles, and so that's why I have a mason jar of water. It's like, where? There was none. It's okay. All right, you want to do what? Yeah. Okay, so with what, this would be that 1 to 2 sentences that kind of gives us a broad statement. What's the general statement about this text? And it doesn't have to look anything like what I wrote up there because application can be very different for each individual. If we start talking about doctrinal things or theological principles, those should be more concrete. But when you're looking at a story initially and just setting a tone, it's the same thing of you read it, you write the book report. What was your take on it? So that's sort of what I did there. And that's literally, I just wrote that God tested Abraham's faith by asking him to sacrifice Isaac, the son of the covenant promise. And due to Abraham's obedience and faith in God's word, a substitutionary sacrifice was provided. For the record, all of that should be in past tense and not a single bit of it is. So that's an error on my part. If I were to be the teacher grading it, yeah, should be God tested and sacrifice was provided because it is Old Testament and it is past tense. And there you go. Even Heather catches these or she's like, what's these? All of it should be past tense because all of this has already happened. Although that would, you got to be careful when you get into the prophecy piece of it, right? Because that is future tense. But yeah, I should have made that correction there, friends. Sorry. What were y'all's takeaways though? If you were to have given it a broad statement, what kind of hit y'all? Any variation of that? It could, I mean, yeah, it could be something a little bit along the same lines, but maybe a little different.
Even the headers give you a clue.
Yeah, it's true. They do.
Even the headers give you a clue. Abraham tested.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Sacrifice Isaac.
Yep. Which honestly can be very helpful. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and the beauty of that is if you don't have time to dig deep into some of the contributing text, the headers are often enough to give you a one-liner to know what sort of happened to funnel into the storyline. So they weren't there in the original text, but don't downplay their value either, obviously.
And sometimes they're in different scriptures. They're weird.
Yes.
They don't. How did you really get that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are times I do that too, where I'm like, that was the takeaway. But I guess that goes back a little bit to the person translating it. That was the application for them. Even if I did not see it that way. Yeah. Other thoughts on all that? On the what? All right. Well, let's do when. So with when.
About ages.
Yes. We talked a lot about ages. Go ahead. No, that's okay. Listen. Same thing.
Looking back at the different ages of Abram's children.
Yeah.
With Ishmael and then that, and so I know somebody said 13 years difference, but I found that basically it's 14 because it's 13 by the time before.
That's true. How about that? You're right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and then knowing that, and I look back to see like when this happened, as
Yeah, yeah.
far as, in other words, what had happened in the things, his mother had already passed, Isaac's.
Isaac's mother, Sarah.
That's, if the biblical the proceed.
She died in the chapter.
Huh?
She died in the chapter.
That's what I'm saying. It was in the line
Yeah.
that she had died.
Hmm.
And she was 127 when she died.
Yeah.
So that made him to be, well, Isaac to be 100, and he was 37 years old when she died.
When she died.
I mean,
That's
we say
interesting.
we don't know, but according to that, and I went back to see was she real, like Betty was asked the question, did something happen before or whatever?
Yeah.
And I can't find a difference there.
Hmm.
And then we even read like when he got Rebecca,
Mm-hmm.
and then that chapter ends with the thing, because then she would comfort him after death. I mean, that last statement in that chapter.
In that chapter.
So then there's things that then say that he got her at 40.
Oh, interesting.
So the when is in there.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I've always looked at it that Sarah died after he went up to sacrifice, because it's in 23 verses 22, but I've never done the math on their ages. Like literally never looked at the math on the ages. So
Well, okay, when they were told, then there's scripture about she's my name, when I go to say a name, it floods my brain. I'm sorry.
you're quite all
It's a
right.
shortcoming.
It's okay.
When
It's related to when you were born. We all.
80s, and they're sort of tough with me.
Hey.
But then when they found out about the birth going to happen,
Yeah.
there was questions about, were they going to do, was he going to provide for a 90 and 100-year-old person?
Yeah.
Now they weren't, they were 89. That was the year before.
Right.
In other words, like I said, I had a stack and I walked away with that.
That's okay.
But to where, so that was that situation. So that Isaac was born the next year.
Right.
And it does say that he was
100.
100.
Yeah.
And then when you go in to find it with finding out when they passed away,
Mm-hmm.
then it brings more of a whole type of thing in there.
That's interesting. I'll have to look into that because I had never done, I mean, I guess you'd call that backwards math, but I'd never re-engineered
I'm more of a numbers person. So.
I know. I was gonna say this makes sense the way your brain works. This is why you have to do this in a group sometimes, because I am not a numbers person. Oh,
So and then I thought, well, because we talked about the representation of him being as a child.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And why I could, I mean, because then I had just verbally heard, not looking, that he had to be in New Zealand at least 30. Well, he had to be older than that.
Yeah, it makes you wonder for sure. Isn't that interesting? So I want to go back and look at this a little bit, because there's an interesting aspect of 19 verse 19 where it says Abraham stayed in Beersheba. So I'm super curious, especially based on what you're saying, is it says he stayed in Beersheba, but at the very beginning of 23, chapter 23 and verse 2, it says Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and weep over her. She was in a different place.
She died in Hebron.
She was in a different place in Hebron. She was in a different place than he was, which is very intriguing because after the sacrifice, Abraham did not go back to the same spot where she was. And they're not far, which I'll show you. Hold on. Here you go. Oh man, it's not that tiny. It's that tiny. I was like, is this super tiny? So Hebron is here and Beersheba is here.
Right.
They were not in the same place, which is sort of odd. At least it's not noted that they were in the same place, which is an odd, it may just be a detail that wasn't maybe eventually he did, but it literally goes from towards the end of 22, he stayed in Beersheba. He hears about some stuff going on, I guess, with his brother, right? And some nieces and nephews that are born. And 23, she dies, but she was in Hebron, and then he went to her. So when you start looking at that verb,
Yeah.
it's like a travel thing. So why were they not in the same location? It's kind of interesting, but then if you start throwing in the timeline with the death and things like that, it's sort of, I'll have to do some more digging because that's not something that's ever been a light bulb for me. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a note. See, this is why you do this. So good.
But, but then you don't see until chapter 24 that, that they're sending for both defense for life.
Yeah.
For Rebecca,
Does it? I'm trying to remember. Y'all refresh my memory. Was it because Sarah didn't want him having a wife outside the family, or was that
Yes.
Abraham? It was Sarah. Okay.
that was it.
That's, I couldn't remember, but I was like, I feel like she was the one who specified in the same way that Hagar went and picked somebody up out of Egypt because that's what she was. Sarah wanted it from her own people too.
Well, she did that in retaliation.
Yeah.
I think, don't you?
They were spiteful women. Like you read those two girls' story, and I'm like, wow, okay. But I mean, I can't imagine living in a house where my husband had another wife either. Just being real honest, that'd be awkward and weird. And
I can't imagine that not being spiteful.
I know, like, because it would be everything. Everything would just be like, oh, well, she did that. I mean, but like, those are the kinds of things we ignore in text, and you should not ignore. We sit there and we read it. It's very clean. Like, oh, well, he had a slave woman become his wife, and he had a baby by her. Okay, and it's like, look at your wife sitting next to you in church. How you think that's gonna go? Not well. I'm sorry.
I often wonder why God allowed all of that
I know.
to be his people.
Yeah.
And the only good thing I can come, because he wanted to be fruitful and multiply and make people on the earth. That's the only thing I can come with.
Yeah. I mean, and it may be the only thing that really, truly of the
But
good
it's
that came out of it.
so it's
True.
so you don't know what part of that is taking place.
True.
Because of lustful thoughts that people have.
Yeah, that's also true. I mean, there's a lot at play with the story in particular. All right, so a couple of things on when as well, because I do think it does sort of color the story a little bit, right? So these are things I just went back a little ways. So, like we talked about last week, this was after the animals cut in two, cleaved in two, and then the smoke, the fire that passed through them. So we have the covenant with God and Abraham that's been established. It is after the outward physical sign of circumcision is implemented as a practice to separate God's people from all the people of the world. So now we have a set asideness, right? That's the whole word for being holy. We're set aside or set apart. So now we have a physical action that's always going to happen to make that continue on the bloodline. There will be a noticeable difference between God's people and everybody else. And so that's established as well. Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed. That means there's this whole mess with Lot and his daughters and blah, 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 blah. And then this is also after Hagar and Ishmael are sent away. So they're really out of the picture, which in my mind's eye should start to diminish some of the angst that Sarah may have had. Maybe home life became more peaceful. maybe not. So to just give a little bit of a picture, I often will try to go a little bit back, especially when you're talking about a family, and just this is early establishment of civilization too. And so sometimes I think it's helpful to do that. So you can keep on going further back, but usually you want to stick to your wins that apply to your main or secondary, like main secondary character, if you can have a main and a secondary main.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Your opinion.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm not always jumping on my back, but do you think the circumcision is one you carry across the bridge?
I do not personally.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I've read.
And I think the New Testament speaks to that over and over and again, where the circumcision is of the heart.
Yeah.
So is it an idea that is carried over while not exact in presentation? Yes. Does that make sense?
I think the thing is that we need something to set ourselves apart.
Correct. Yep.
That we can take that aspect of it.
Yep.
Of what
yeah. And I think one of the big things, this is again not here, but me, that really created the Levitical law and ending up with 600 plus laws is that it was so easy to physically identify as different and special and unique and marked. And so then it became all this other outward sign stuff. And they forgot the original relationship where God himself showed up and talked to Abraham. That was relationship. That was all that was. But they removed that and made it just satisfactory to have done something on the outside. Well, all along, God said, I want you to turn from your wicked ways. I want your heart after me. This is what I'm looking for. Repent, come after me, chase after me like a lover would chase after me. And they just were like, no, we're good with this outside thing. Just leave us alone on the inside. So when you get into the New Testament, that's where he's like, it doesn't matter what you do on the outside, circumcised or otherwise, doesn't bother me anymore, because what I want is your heart. It's what I wanted all along. And now it doesn't matter about that law because I have fulfilled that law. That law was intended originally to make you righteous on the inside, which could never happen until I came. So I don't think it's an exact physical carry across the bridge, but I think it is a principle that you can lift out of it and carry across.
I just know some people do carry that across.
Oh, sure they do. Yes.
Well, I did when I had my kids.
And Betty's like, it was me. I did it.
I know, but
That's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, I do think it was a very commonly held notion for a very long, long time. And so I worked as
Is
a,
it done anymore?
no, it's not even paid for by insurance anymore. Like it used to be, it's not anymore at all. I mean, if you do it, it's elective. It is elective.
But I know there
There
was a conversation she was there when we're talking within our family.
Mm.
And one was being really chastised, another one, and talking about, and in other words, that was, if you weren't circumcised, you weren't saved. Basically, that's what the
Oh, yes.
objection was.
And that's still, I think it's still a notion that a lot of people have, very much still
But
have.
you haven't done that yet.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. But as far as, so I worked as a childbirth instructor for a long time. I was a doula at several births. Like, so I have been around it more recently. But as we were having our boys, it was definitely coming into conversation and discussion. Like, do you do it anymore? Do you not do it anymore? And it was definitely not covered anymore at all. It's not seen as medically necessary, so they don't pay for it. Unless you have some really special insurance, I suppose. But I do know, and I have had that exact conversation with people who are like, well, if they're not, then there's no way they can be saved. And it's interesting because you look at it, you're like, but the Bible specifically talks about how that does not matter in the New Testament.
That's not what it takes to be saved.
Like that ain't. Yeah, and I mean, it's an interesting notion how a principle gets lifted. So this is what we talk about, right? A principle gets lifted and carried across. Should it have been carried across? Not really. The other reality is that the people who were circumcised ethnically were Jews, Hebrews. We're not those people either. Like ethnically, we're not even those people. So again, but that's what happens sometimes, right? And
But then they would probably take the stand that, well, but the Israelites did circumcise their slaves. or
True.
whatever.
that's true. Yeah.
So
you could argue that.
He would argue that point.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting how something becomes a back and forth, and it can be a hill people die on, right? Like, why are we dying on this? This doesn't seem like the hill. Hold on.
But I think the thing in part that made that most is because that's what they said. They were supposed to do everything. That was the total atonement.
Yes, true. Yeah. At that time.
At a one-time
Yeah,
situation.
true. Isn't it interesting though? I mean, it's kind of crazy the things that get taken out of the text and applied in certain ways. And it definitely set them apart. It wasn't a practice that anybody else did. So to have done it was to be like, well, you guys are noticeably different. Why are you different? And then it's this gateway of a witness. Well, boys go out in the woods together all the time. Not my boys are. Michelle's like, wait, Heather, what's going on here?
I'm just thinking, you know,
At all the urinals.
those other people come up to the Hebrews. Oh yeah, drop your pants. And then
No.
oh shoot. But I'm thinking,
Oh,
Boys' bathrooms are totally different than.
yes, yes.
They are standing there
Well,
going to the bathroom.
well, I
and you
still
can
can't
see
get over
tree.
that boys still aren't circumcised anymore, because when mine were born, there wasn't even a discussion.
it was done in the hospital before you left. Usually.
And
Yeah.
they didn't even say, do you want it?
Yeah.
It was just a given.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
just-
yeah. And now it is a question. And do you want to pay for it or not?
Wow.
It's pretty interesting. I mean,
Well,
I mean, nobody even
Yeah,
asked them.
but yes, I mean, I don't remember, I just know that that's what I did. I mean,
Yeah,
but you know.
we were asked.
In
can't-
Florida?
I really can't remember whether we were asked or not.
Or we
but
told them,
it-
whichever. I don't
But it
know.
wasn't
We were
that
asked.
day.
You just
We-
told
It
them.
wasn't the eighth
Yeah.
day, no, that, and in fact, it just is real.
Not what age now. It's
It
like-
was, it really upset me when I realized. That's probably one of the first things that I realized that the medical field had really played a number on us way back when I didn't know it until I had with my grandchild. But the way they shoot up babies at birth. And one of the main ones is that PK2 shot.
Mhm.
And to know that now, that is horrible. And the only reason they do that is so that they don't want to be liable for a baby bleeding.
Yeah, hemorrhaging. Yeah, they circumcise in the hospital if you had had,
Or
Yeah.
what they were.
yeah, but only if they've had a vitamin K shot.
Oh, absolutely.
Otherwise, they won't. And so, if you have a baby outside the hospital in any capacity, they won't do the vitamin. Well, they won't circumcise the baby. Then you get sent somewhere else in the first place. But it's completely optional on the vitamin K. And I mean, it's in the state, it's optional, but it's not done as procedure. They ask if you're outside the hospital typically. So,
And that shot can be very detrimental to the baby. It can.
Mhm.
And it's just another way.
Well, I was just ignorant.
Well, I was.
well,
I
there was a
mean,
lot of SOP
and
that
then
nobody
now I'm
told you
even more
about.
ignorant because I don't know anything anymore.
Like, it's all different now. It's crazy. It is crazy. So,
But see, I didn't realize, I think it's been within the last well, it's been this is my time, this time, going through the Old Testament, talking about all the laws.
mhm,
I didn't, and I've read it,
mhm.
because this isn't my first time of going through the Old Testament. I don't even want to say. It's been more than twice. Anyway, but the 600, I thought the 612, whatever laws they talk about, I thought that was the add-ons, but Deuteronomy specified, and I'm thinking, oh, well then how many are there now?
Right. It makes you wonder. You're like, second.
Because I thought the 600 were all the ones that they started piling on.
Yeah.
I'm not going back and counting them, y'all.
Betty says,
She will.
yeah, she's the numbers lady. Get her to do it.
She doesn't have to study something else, she will.
She put a bug in her ear now, right? All right, I'll move on to the where aspect of it. So one of the things, I am not geographical in any capacity. Were it not for my husband, I'd probably be lost most of the time, frankly. I also don't mind getting in a car and just driving, and then I'll be like, hey, and recognize a place, which Jeremy really loves, just so you guys know. So I always pull up a map. I need to see it. I need it to be crystal clear. I need it to be oriented to the north. Like all the things. I mean, it's really ridiculous.
You got in some other car got now will tell you which direction you're going.
I know. And I'm like, no. I need to know if I go left or right. Don't tell me to go north. Like, I will definitely be lost.
Well, we would take- Anyway, 'cause we need locations. We need
Yes.
obstacles to where we make the turns.
Yep, I am very much. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I really am lost.
Someplace you haven't been in 5 years,
Mm.
to see how you get lost real quick.
Oh,
That's the
just driving Concord from
Yeah.
now 50 years ago. It's unreal.
It is the truth. And so what I'll do, and I actually, I may send y'all this link because I found this website today and I actually really loved it. It's a lot of Bible maps and it does break it down into smaller scripture sections on the maps too. So this one had, I don't know, but I'll put it in the email. I was like,
Since he found it, and he loved it.
Be like,
Tell us to go.
I'm trying to remember if I saved it on my phone or I'll look and see if I can find it.
Bible history online.
Maybe it sounds good, but maybe not. I'll have to double check. But what I loved about this one is it has the early section of Abraham's journeys, and some of it was broken down that way. So you have his initial move out of Ur and followed that trail. And so then you get into the later text, which I thought was pretty cool. But it's helpful, I think, because it gives you where he was in Beersheba here.
Yeah.
And then he went to Mount Moriah, which I literally am not seeing now.
Do you see Bethlehem or Jerusalem?
No.
Jerusalem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jerusalem's
it's-
there. Yeah, I don't have my glasses on. There's Jerusalem. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was
No
just,
glasses.
it's right there.
So yeah, so you would have been talking about a traveling trip up here. And I will tell y'all are probably already aware of this. I had zero concept of this until last week. Do you know if it were not for that mountain range right there, this would all be water. Literally, it blocks like a dike because that is so far below sea level. The Dead Sea is so far below sea level. Were it not for that, all it would take is this to flood over if it were flat and it would just be water. It blew my mind. The kids and I were like, wait, what? But it just holds it in place. It's that far below sea level, which is crazy. And fascinating all at the same time, because you look at it and you go, in a random chaotic boom, could this really happen? So I always look for reasons to affirm creation with my kids. I'm like, tell me that could happen with an explosion. And my kids are like, there's no way. And I'm like, that's right.
Well, New Orleans is below sea.
It is. And it's a dangerous city to have. Like, they should have known better, but they did it. And we saw what happened with that, with a hurricane. So it's crazy to me. The mountain range is there. So usually I'll do this, and this is largely just for my own point of reference. I just don't know geography very well. I have to have a visual aid with it. And sometimes when you're discipling a group of people, you're not the only one that doesn't know the map, honestly. If you don't know it, there's someone sitting in a group, especially out of a group of 5 to 10, who also has no concept. This is not a part of geography that's taught when we're in any form of school at all. Elementary, high school, I didn't even take it in college. So I think it's helpful to establish this. And yes, everybody has it in the back of their Bible, but tell me who flips there. And half the time I can't see it anyways, because I clearly couldn't even see that up there. Put my glasses back on, I'll be good.
I would say that. Small little things through there.
That's amazing.
Some of those, not all of them, they still have a section.
Sure.
But they do have little things like this that sort of give you a guide.
But it makes more sense to have it beside the story. I think it does, because it just elevates the richness of it. And when it's all in the back, you never look there. You typically don't. Yeah, I mean,
Then you say,
Well,
which
you
one
don't-
of them I want? Yeah, that was funny. I was trying to find something.
yeah, you're like, is this the patriarchs? Would this be in the patriarchs map? That's always how I am. I'm like, I think this is the patriarchs map. I promise I'll put this link in there. So you'll have some other good stuff. So with the how there, so here's how and why are on these last pieces here. How is a question that you just kind of have to figure out which ones you want to ask. Honestly, you could ask a zillion of them. For me, this is what stood out, and y'all can tell me if it was different for you, but I always look at things like, how did God speak to someone? I think that's important. Was it simple conversation? Was it auditory? Was it in a vision? Was it in a dream? I think that matters because it sort of sets the tone for how the communication will continue. Obviously, he spoke to Abraham. When he spoke to Abraham the first time, he turned around and spoke to him the second time and said, hey, hold your knife. Wait just 1 second. There's a ram over there, right? So there's usually continuity in method. Not always, but sometimes. How did Abraham respond? So this gives you often a character contrast. Did he obey? Did he disobey? And those are the things that I typically look for, because all throughout the narrative, the stories are to make a point of character. Was the person obedient to the Lord? Was his heart after the Lord? Was it not? And that usually sets the tone for how it ends, or what the theological principle is that we take out of it. So
I'd like to know if he had a heart-wrenching few days, or,
It said he
struggle.
yeah, he did. He got it the next morning.
That's right. That's right.
But I do think
Restless night then.
right. But it's interesting too. And this was the question I asked. How long would it have taken him to have gotten where I didn't put that up there, although it's a great question, to have gotten up there? Because you think about that hike. I mean, we hike a lot and it's usually quiet. Does it say 3 days? Oh, look at y'all. Listen, good job.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
That's the
That's,
connection.
that's the other
There
sin.
you go. See, y'all did it. I love it. Okay,
Yeah.
but think about that 3 days. It's quiet. He's not carrying around a boombox, listening to his favorite tunes, going up the hike like so many people do nowadays. And I just want to
And men
scream.
don't talk.
Men don't talk at all. And I'm sure the servants are also men. So you got 5 dudes, 2 servants, 2 guys. No, 4 dudes. I can't do math. I said numbers weren't my thing. I was like, how many people and a donkey? Hold on. But nobody's talking for 3 days. I mean, yeah. That would have been hilarious. Add that into like, hold on, I mixed up my stories. But it would have been, as a mom, I cannot imagine those 3 days. I really cannot. And I can't imagine that any dad with a single son left because the other one was sent away because your 2 wives couldn't get along. It's the last son. You're significantly older now. So how could those 3 days have been? I cannot fathom that they were. I mean, maybe he was just that trusting and it was fine, right?
Just questioning God, you said that I would have all these descendants, and if I kill this kid, then
Yeah.
how?
Yeah.
You know?
Are you going to throw in the Hebrews thing?
No, but I mean, in other words, he was so faithful. I mean,
He was.
he has to show God that he really, he's testing him,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he's testing him for Abraham
Mm-hmm. True.
instead of, because God knows what he's going to do.
Yeah.
You know, we don't talk about it.
No.
In other words, I think encouragement, once he follows through with this, the way that he did, it's just like we train children and that once they accomplish something, then they made it their own.
Right.
And I think this is making Abraham his own for all of what he's got to do in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, it was his turn to put rubber to the road and I'm gonna walk it out and I'm gonna do exactly what I was asked, no matter what that looks like. Yeah, I mean,
And you mentioned Hebrew. I often wondered how that scripture really got to the page.
I know. So in Hebrews, it talks about Abraham had faith even to believe unto resurrection of his son. Like even unto
considered him already dead.
Yes. Which is mind boggling because at that point, no one has ever been resurrected. No one. This isn't like, hey, I've seen Lazarus be raised or Jairus' daughter. No one has ever seen someone brought back from the dead. And yet that would have been it.
Sodom and Gomorrah people are walking around.
Yeah. They're all gone completely, right? So it's an interesting, where could he get that notion from? I mean, to me, that it shows the divinity in the whole situation because there's no way for him. I mean, it's not a concept I think that you could just come up with on your own. Like a dead man comes back to life. My son's going to die and come back.
And this is before all of those prophet things, is it not? Is it timeline? In other words, none of the scripture has been written.
No.
Yep.
To where, I mean, we can look back at the end of the Old Testament and say, because you know, you have the difference of opinions of what, and some people, what they do, which I don't know. It's just really a big mystery if you really start digging into it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Moses is attributed to writing the 5 books of law, but you think that story has actually been revealed to Moses? I mean,
it is interesting. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
they're told down through
Oral tradition.
ages.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Maybe so. Well, one of the things that I found in reading this week, and again, sometimes words get used, and they may not have that exact connotation, but they use the term for a burnt sacrifice or a burnt offering. And what I read culturally, and this is not to be grotesque and take it to a level that's like, ugh, but they would cut the sacrifice into pieces. And so when you're talking about doing that with Isaac, and then believing that he could be brought back from the dead, if that was in fact how he would offer it in the same way that it was to be offered in the sacrificial system, to come to believe that this person not only would be dead, but would not be completely comprised physically anymore, and still believe that that could be put back together. To me, it was very interesting. It added a lot of depth for me without getting it too gross. And I don't know that I'd ever teach that from a lectern, to be honest with you, but it was kind of mind boggling to think, I mean, he was like, he's the maker of all life. He can do whatever he needs to with the body. It doesn't even matter. Just sort of, it hit home in a deeper way, and it would have made, even to me, more strong my perception of Abraham's faith, because maybe you cut like a spot on the neck, but you missed the carotid, so he doesn't really bleed out and he's fine, didn't really die, it wasn't that bad. You're talking about a serious finality in doing a sacrifice the way that the word means. And so for me, I was just like, I mean, he went up that mountain knowing full well and committed, completely committed. It doesn't say he wavered, it doesn't say he took an extra night. I mean, he did the thing, which is wild to me. But I don't know. I think even as a dad, it could not have been an easy thing. Contrary, it's not noted, but Abraham was also human.
And then to call it worship.
Yes, just wild, but it is.
God
It
is
is
just given great portion of the spirit. Where it comes and goes in the Old Testament.
True.
Had to, for him to be able to, I believe, to really be as
Be calm.
as he was.
You're
Too,
probably right.
maybe he had learned a lot from trying to work things out his own way.
That's true.
Through Ishmael. And,
Yeah, more seasoned.
hopefully we do learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, that's
Learn
true.
the faithfulness of God.
Yeah, that is true.
Be interesting to know what he told Sarah.
Or did he just get up and leave? They're like, I'll deal with her when I get back. Yeah, I'm gonna say, but it depends on her. Yeah, I'm gonna say they weren't together. Yeah. She didn't find a friend. Where are you?
I see what I can buy.
Yeah.
If anything.
Let me know. So of interest, when you look in 22:19, Abraham is in Beersheba. When she dies, she's in Hebron. So they're not together. And
And he goes to her.
And maybe
Yeah.
that's the reason why, because a mother would be, no, you're not doing that.
Yeah. When it's the only reason I've ever caught that, to be totally transparent, is I love Dennis Prager, but Dennis Prager is a Jew. He is not a Messianic Jew. And he wrote several commentaries on the Bible, the Old Testament, what they consider the Bible. Right. Yeah. The Torah. I use that word to, like, he would absolutely lose his mind that I included the New Testament in that. So the Torah, and specifically on the Pentateuch. And I really do like it, but you cannot use the commentary without the perception that he is a Jew with no perception of Christ in the future. So he actually made that comment in his commentary where he said Abraham stayed here while she was there. And it looks like they were not ever together again after God told him to go sacrifice Isaac, and he obeyed. Which, I mean, as a mom, I get it. Like, if Abraham told me that God told him to do this, I still don't even know that I would be fine with that, right? I would be like, you need to come tell me that you want my husband to go sacrifice my child. I mean, like, and I think sometimes we do that with the Bible where we just make it so clean. And I'm like, it would not have been a clean conversation. It's like, that's my boy. I don't care. I mean, that's my boy. Yeah. I doubt it either. And if they weren't together, then that definitely makes sense, obviously. But if they were, and then they weren't together anymore, you can't help but understand. At the same moment, I think there's a lot of dysfunction within their family as a whole overall, obviously, but which just goes to show that if he can use them, he can use us. But it is an interesting question to ask, I think. So yes. Was it from the Abimelech covenant thing, the agreement about the well? I think that's why.
That kind of tree.
And I never did look it up, and now I can't remember what was the kind of tree.
What, T1?
Yes.
Yes.
Tim or whatever.
TAM.
Tamarisk. Yeah, the tamarisk tree. And I don't know what kind of tree that is. I need to look that up. That way I know as well. But yeah, I think he planted that because of the argument over the well, to be honest with you. They came to an agreement, planted
But
it.
he might have been there because of the argument.
Mm-hmm. That's true too. Handling that issue and then
Standing up for us.
Mhm.
Period.
Yeah. And
Spot one more time.
Tamarisk. And I don't know if it's tamarisk.
It breaks it after the,
Is it like a fruit tree or something?
It's a shrub.
Oh,
Grows 5 to 20 feet.
That's not a shrub. It's
Big shrub,
a big shrub.
small tree.
Yeah.
Now a major noxious weed in the answer.
Go figure. Fun things you learn, right? That's wild.
Who says that? Google?
Good old Google.
It's one of those AIs.
No, there you go. Well,
I'd say that.
I hate those things. But sometimes they're
Yeah, and you don't.
Then you have to spend time.
Sometimes I
see whether
Google
they're correct
something,
or
and
not.
they, why do I even take these people for their word?
I know you're like, I shouldn't believe
Now,
this.
now, this YouTube says that Abraham did it for shade.
He planted it there for that.
A tree for shade in Beersheba and worship the eternal God.
All right, it says there he called upon the name of the Lord, the eternal God.
Video.
Well, interesting.
Man,
Live feed coming to you now. There's Sheba.
It's a tree.
Oh man. All right. So here's some of the other questions. And look, see, I had a question here. How long did they travel? Which y'all answered already, which is kind of cool. These are the kinds of things sometimes that I will ask in the early phases, and then we'll come across them just because I've thought to ask the question. So instantaneously, y'all were able to come up with that. I do, not that you don't know it, but sometimes it can play a role in what you lift from it theologically or doctrinally. How they traveled to the site. Obviously, they were probably on foot or with a donkey, take your pick, but it's not something to ignore because sometimes details matter. Well, always details matter, but sometimes they matter more than not. And if you ignore them, and especially if you ignore them at the offset, remember at the very beginning, I said, read, reread, pay attention to all the crazy details, highlight, circle, all of the things. Don't ignore anything. You can get further down into the process where you're talking with someone and teaching, where some of the stuff falls off to the side. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily say that a burnt offering cuts something into pieces during a lesson, but it might matter. And if it matters, then it might. So it's those sorts of details you want.
Well, it does say he's saddled.
Oh, there you go. So he probably wrote it. How funny it is in there. Somebody wrote it, or maybe they put the wood on it. Did they?
Yeah, you go back and get the comparisons of scriptures.
Yeah, exactly.
Food,
Yeah, food and water. 3-day travel in the desert. Yep. Apparently, I have one that's very blank. In case you guys want to go with questions, but they're like, there's just dots. How did God provide the substitute? This is obviously something that we come to know later, but to me it helps to ask the question because it's a think as you read kind of posturing, right? Like, what can I be thinking about, sort of thing. And then the why, I didn't answer that question at all, but that's usually the theological principle or the doctrinal truth that comes out of it. Why did God test Abraham? That's the original audience, the purpose in hearing this narrative, the purpose in it occurring at that time. And once we figure that out, then we can look forward to where we bring it across the bridge so that we can use it here and now. But I always try to read with those things in mind. Why was this told? Why did this happen? Why did it happen the way that it happened? Because that matters as to whether or not I can pull it forward for us for an application. There's always an application, but whether or not I can pull certain aspects of it, it just changes depending on the questions that you ask. So
Don't you wish you could go back and remember what it was like when you first connected this story with Jesus?
yeah.
I mean, when you're a young believer, or I don't know, maybe I never grew up in church. So when I was saved at 15 and started going to church, I'd never been to church. I'd never been in children's Sunday school or VBS, never heard these stories.
Yeah.
So I was, a young adult when I'm starting to hear this stuff. And I would love to just go back and think, wow, why don't I even remember that light bulb going off?
Oh,
Wow, here is the foreshadowing
Yeah.
of God giving his only son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think, and this is just from my perspective as a mom. So we took our kids to Arizona in September, October this year, and I had gone multiple times as a child, and I loved it. I still love that place, but it was the coolest thing ever to see it through their eyes. Like, so cool. So to your point, disciples, when we disciple others, we get to have our light bulb moment again because you get to see it again with the fresh eyes of the person who's like, wait. Are you talking about this is Jesus? Are you telling me this is a foreshadowing of Jesus? And that's when you're like, oh, I kind of do remember a little bit about how it felt, right? Because you get to feel it with them again. And I think that's the benefit of discipling others and walking alongside them, because I mean, I'm 43. I was saved when I was 9. I don't remember when it occurred to me either. And that's why I don't ever want it to be a dry text, because when you come to it and you sit down with it, you're like, oh my goodness, that's exactly what it was. Abraham had no idea about Jesus, but here it is. I mean, he lived out the foreshadowing of the sacrifice of a son. It's a wild thing, honestly, but I do think sometimes when the light bulb goes off for somebody else, that's when you're like, okay, yeah, like I kind of do remember it. But yeah, I do kind of wish like maybe we could have had live feeds and seen our faces when we experienced it the first time.
A lot of y'all know I teach first graders now, and in the last couple of years, I changed literature. This new literature is put out by the regular Baptist press, and I'm not sure what Baptist those are. It's not independent, but Pastor Michael knows somebody that works for it, and
Oh,
he
that's
gave
cool.
approval to this literature. I just love it. But I can remember when I was teaching the story of the Passover, the first Passover, and not Passover celebration, the Passover of Moses. And, you used to in kids' literature, you get all posters and you get all this stuff. And so somebody had come up with this poster, and it was a light bulb moment for me because I didn't make these connections as a child. I made them as an adult, but now I'm trying to give those connections to children. And so this poster is a door, and you cut it apart and you make where the door opens, and it's where they painted the blood across the door. And so inside the door was John 3:16. And that's the verse, but you're in Exodus, and you're teaching that, and there's the Passover door. And and then you talk about the Passover lamb. And it just blew my mind, because gosh, I wish Lifeway made those connections. They don't.
Yeah.
And
But there's such rich connections.
oh yeah.